Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the second day of the conclave on universal ethics, perspective of emotional intelligence in education. For the first session of the day, we have this session is on how to introduce universal ethics into various disciplines and fields in contemporary education system. And for this session, we have Venerable Gishi Doju Damdula as the chairperson, and we have Dr. T.K. Mishra ji, Dr. Harsh Mishra ji, and Professor Meenakshi Thapan ji as the panelists. And I request everyone, the speakers and chairperson, to take their seat on the dais. Each speaker would be given 20 minutes each and following with question and answer session. And I request the chairperson to keep the time so not to skip the question and answer session. And without without much ado, I request the chairperson to start with the session. Thank you.
Good morning, every one of you. The topic for this morning's session: how to introduce universal ethics into various disciplines and fields in contemporary education system. So yesterday we had quite a lengthy discussion on what constitutes universal ethics and what constitutes ethics in the first place, then universal ethics, and the efforts from the different the quarters of the institutions, the people, and particularly Professor Vivek Sunji, and Professor Meenakshi Thapan ji. Two of them in 2012, I remember that under the auspices of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the guidance of Dr. Dinesh Singh, so two of them on the ground actually started a universal ethics program in Delhi University. It was a great success, I would say. And if I'm not wrong, I'm expecting Professor Meenakshi ji to speak a little bit about this. Of course, she has her own the presentation prepared, but this is a psychoethics, universal ethics in action, which they actually implemented. And of course, we conduct the conferences, and then the people set up centers, people set up the institutions and so forth. And finally, the point is that it should be implemented, or it should be directed in various ways, not only one direction. On the academic, the settings, and some in the form of the activism, not necessarily in a negative sense, the social activism, and some in the form of rehabilitation centers and so forth. So we see that we have Professor Meenakshi, as I said earlier, she was in fact the one. If I would really look for someone who will have a comprehensive picture of what constitutes universal ethics, which would be which is crucially required for the humanity now, we see that one of the persons would be Professor Meenakshi ji, because she was the one who was on the ground, who actually worked on this in Delhi University, in about 17 colleges. the initial first year was like a project, the pilot project for about where 17 colleges were involved, and it was a grand success. And we also have Venerable Kabirji there, who also took part in that. We see that it was a grand success. And then we the following year, it was supposed to be implemented in all the colleges under Delhi University. Unfortunately, for some reasons, it was put on hold for some time. And then we have here the next speaker. We have Dr. T.J. Mishraji. Do you know him from yesterday? And in fact, again, the thing was that the first time we came to know each other was that Professor Mishraji, along with the faculties, including Dr. Nagendraji, is he here? Okay, Dr. Nagendraji and the other faculties plus students came to Tibet House, and then we had some just very casual discussion. From them, I got the feeling that, wow, it's amazing that we have the wonderful professor here. This was, in fact, if we can bring about influence in the universities, colleges, that would the most ideal thing. For example, say, Tibet House, we may do something as a part of the fieldwork, but how the universities and colleges, they affect the students, and the students, they affect the future, they shape the future. So that is something on a very different plane of reality, plane of the activism. So therefore, I saw that he's very dynamic. And then later on, I came to disclose the passion for this even more closely, to the extent that he's very closely connected with the government, and the government are so ready to finance him and his college to bring together the college students, the teachers, the professors from various colleges, not only from Delhi University, but from elsewhere in the other states. So that way, he conducted such a massive program quite recently, where I also got the opportunity to take part in that. So I was so impressed that, wow, this is amazing. If this is something which is happening on the university and college level, then for sure there's a hope for the future. So we are very happy that we have Dr. Mishra here, and then we have Professor Harsh Mishra. And this morning I was just browsing through the CV, and I was again very impressed to see that there's an entrepreneur actually there working for the well-being of the people and so forth, and being in the deeply believing in this concept, universal ethics. There's something so important. We teach something, if you don't believe in it, then the effect is much less. So where somebody has the belief, confidence, the belief, confidence, and then proactivity and optimism. With this proactivity, so this is what I could very clearly see in Professor Harsh Mishra. So we are very fortunate that three of the participants are here, the speakers are here to present us, highlight us with the implementation side, how we can possibly bring to implementation of the universal ethics, which is something otherwise very new as compared to the many earlier decades of the spirituality or decades of the religiosity in the community. So where things are being dominated by religions. In fact, I personally would say that religions taking over in a community, there's nothing wrong in it. Not only there's nothing wrong in it, it has two sides. One is the ritual side, and the other one is the content and the ritual. And in fact, oftentimes people who go to the extent of fundamentalism, fanaticism. So what they do is that they most of the time they did not even touch the contents of their own religion. They are so obsessed with the religiosity or the spirituality, the ritual side, of it, which demarcates from other religions. Content, if somebody emphasizes on the content, it's just the same. Everywhere is the same. The moment you touch the ritual side, then you see the difference. On that basis, my religion is better. This concept arises. That brings to fundamentalism, and the purpose of the religion is all defeated the moment the split and the divide is created in the name of religion. So therefore, the point is now how to bring this universal ethics to be embraced by everyone, whether you're a believer, non-believer, whether you're scientist, educated, uneducated, non-scientist, or male, female, old, young, whosoever, everyone. There's something, and is there a principle, a driving force for one to behave in a nice way, so that the world doesn't suffer, you do not suffer, your family members do not suffer. So this is the point. So with that in mind, I'd like to first of all give it to Professor Meenakshi ji, and as I was being very strictly given the instruction by the moderator, 20 minutes, and then at 15 minutes time I will send you education. Yeah, thank you.
It's disappeared. Can I have your assistance, please? It's not there on the... Is this it? So now I put it in this. I have to go back. How do I go back? Just go back. Okay. So before I begin, I just like to thank Geshe-la and Tibet House for inviting me to this conclave, and also, more importantly, for being a beacon light in Delhi, because many of us actually go to Geshe-la and participate and attend his teachings there. So I'm so happy to have the opportunity to share my work with you all. As Geshe-la mentioned, we had been doing this work in Delhi University. Since he asked me to speak, I'll just briefly mention what happened. And that program, which was initiated in several colleges, we did like a pilot first for 1 year, and we had teachers from different colleges signing up and coming to the university to actually take part in classes that Kabirji and Geshe-la were conducting, and some others, and it went very well. And then finally we were to then prepare the curriculum which the teachers brought to us from the colleges, so the students took part in it as well. And when that program was drawn up, it was presented to Professor Vivek Suneja, who was then the Pro-Vice Chancellor and really behind the whole thing. Unfortunately, that was the time he chose to resign for some other reasons, and this got shelved. So you always need somebody to push something through. I have been now for the last year and a half, yesterday, working on teacher education. Yesterday, a lot of speakers mentioned that really we need to work with teachers, and this is something that has been talked about, written about by different people. Krishnamurti has been writing about this, how first the teacher needs to be educated. So I don't know, about 20, I'm going to try my hardest, about 20 minutes. So basically, this is work I've been doing for the last year and a half at the Rishi Valley Institute for Educational Resources, where I was located on a sabbatical. I'm now back in Delhi University, but the work continues. So I want to begin with the idea of the sacred. Why is this work important? For us, those of us who are interested in the pursuit of the sacred, many of us think that it is one way of looking at the sacred is through the organization of religion and its outcomes, and which is how the sacred is usually defined. The other is in terms of individual quests, and a lot of work has been done in this area, and I don't want to go into that. But I think I'm more focused on the third aspect, when we view the sacred as not an individual enterprise or not located in a religion, organized religion as such, but as connectedness with humanity in the context of interdependence. And here I actually would like to draw inspiration from both Krishnamurti and His Holiness, because it is Krishnamurti who actually talks about what does it mean to be? Why are we always considering what we want to become, must become, striving for something else? But let's be located in the present. And His Holiness's and Krishnamurti and His Holiness's idea of being connected to one another. Again, there's not much time to go into all of this, but here the idea, therefore, to come to education, so that the idea of the transcendent does not lie in another world, but it's present in the everyday. And change, therefore, begins with oneself. And only then can I express my agency in the world. So it's not an individual phenomena, it's related to public good. And in this process, the teacher is central to what we may call the transformative educational process. And she first begins to engage with her role and self-perception as a teacher, and by that she's enabled to engage in a similar process with students. So the process of self-knowing is actually really important, and it's only after that or during that she can work with students by paying attention to both their cognitive and emotional development in education. I have some figures which I'm not going to go into here because there's no time, because how the kind of abysmal state of education in India. Professor Bibek Raj yesterday talked about some of these issues in his talk in the morning yesterday. Also the gaps in teacher education all over the country actually. There is a phenomenon of the number of single teacher schools. If you see that actually tells you how desperate the situation is for teachers, how much we need to increase the workforce, but at the same time we don't have the ability to do so. And by giving into private institutions, they are not accountable to a large extent, and therefore the kind of quality of teacher education that is imparted is not education that we would consider actually of much use. And how did this work, by the way, just as an aside, start? Because the Bihar government approached the Rishi Valley Institute for Educational Resources with a request that they had been teaching a curriculum, 2-year program for in-service elementary school teachers, which had been prepared by some very eminent professors in Delhi and in other parts of the country, and they had been doing it for 2 years. It was a very 800-page voluminous document that I saw in very dense Hindi, and apparently at the end of the 2 years, the teachers didn't know anything. They hadn't learned nothing from it. So the government was feeling very worried that how are we going to sort of work with teachers, and they asked River to actually help them provide a program which would be more accessible. So that is what we have been doing. I'm just going to... So what should teacher education broadly include? First and foremost, in this country, we actually don't seem to trust our teachers. We seem to think that there is a way in which the teacher doesn't know anything, especially women teachers. There's a lot of, I'm talking about elementary school teachers. And there is a focus on developing pedagogic skills, but at the same time, we need to encourage teachers to share right relationship with children, engage them with empathy and compassion. And here, this really is not so, it's easily said and written, but actually there is a need for a fundamental reimagining of the role of the teacher. It's not, I can just write all this and you can all listen and go home. But unless when we are working with teachers, we are able to look at them differently and not see them with a, kind of top-down approach where they're going to be pumped in with skill development, which is what a lot of our teacher training institutions do. We give them skills on how to teach maths, history, geography, and so on. But we don't talk about this other aspect, or we talk about it only in a psychology course, which is dominated by theories of learning and statistical information and so on. So what we're trying to do at River is actually build this kind of a holistic teacher education program that builds a strong teacher knowledge base. So we are not saying don't make them good in pedagogic skills, do that, but along with self-understanding through simple pedagogic approaches that address children's academic excellence, but also focusing on the ethical and emotional dimensions of behavior. So those are not neglected or considered the job of religion or the family. In the West, it was considered the role of the church or the family. But I think in India as well, that's the work of the community. We don't have to talk to them about ethics, except in a very didactic way. But our approach is that we are not didactic. So we have a core curriculum, which is the curriculum we are using from the NCTE, which is the National Council for Teacher Education, and the IGNOU's Diploma in Elementary Education. We don't mess with that, because in order for it to be acceptable, you have to work with the state. If you want to have a larger outreach to more teacher education institutions around the country, it's really important to work with the state. So we keep the core curriculum, and if it's governed by the National Council for Teacher Education, we work with that. But we use what we call enrichment of each of those modules. And I'm going to just give you some examples. It's making it more accessible, using new media. So each teacher in a school now, that is by the way, the new decision of the government is going to be given a tablet, but a computer tablet, to actually, with everything keyed in. Now the government also has a vested interest. It's for surveillance purposes. They'll know whether the teacher's on duty or sitting at home taking tuition. So that's their main reason for doing it. But we can also use it for other things. And one of the things is we are going to insert our program into that tablet. So when the teacher's handed that tablet, she already has access to this enrichment in her, and whenever she's free, she can just work on it. And the most important, as I said, partnership with the state, because without that we can't. So how are teachers imagined by this program? The teacher's introspective, she works on her own transformation, but she's active, and the self-learner assesses, she's also a self-learner. So she assesses her work continuously. And here we can see, I don't know, I have many videos. I don't know if I have time to actually go through all of them. Maybe a little from this. How the teacher is using his own experience as a medium.
విషయాలు తెలుసు కదా మీకు. నిన్న మనం ఆ పల్లెకి పోయి అందరితో మాట్లాడొచ్చినాం కదా, మీకు మీరు ఏం నేర్చుకున్నారు దాని ద్వారా? మనం పోయి మీతో మాట్లాడొచ్చిన దాని ద్వారా ఏమేమి నేర్చుకున్నారు?
Teachers, we show them in the programs, in the modules, these videos, that how you can do this kind of thing.
అయితే ఏమేమి తెలుసుకున్నారో ఒక్కొక్కరు సరేనా?
Again, how are students imagine? This is another video. That is, they can freely interact. The purpose of many of our teachers think of their role as classroom management, that they have to go sit in the classroom and control the class in order to teach. But no, it can be actually they allow children to participate in each other's learning. They should be motivated and they should be responsible for their own learning, sensitive, fully aware of themselves and their relationships with others. I'm not going to show this. Similarly, with the community, what is the relationship with the community? Are they related to each other or are they outside? How can we help children and teachers understand that the role of the community is very important? Because many of the schools that are located in rural areas actually need to engage. They are not isolated places where you can teach some subjects and then go home. The important thing is to actually bring the community into the classroom. What are the foundational ideas of the program? That learning by hand is as important. Yesterday, somebody talked about this. Why do we neglect the hand? Why do we neglect nature, for that matter? We also want to emphasize that it's important to understand the student's process and pace of learning, and that the teacher has to therefore develop methods of classroom teaching that are related to the student's pace. Order and discipline cannot be imposed. They has to come from within and must lead to freedom. So in that sense, further paying attention to one's emotions, recognizing them, being aware of them, dealing with them becomes an important component of pedagogy, and as important as the teaching of skills. I also want to quickly tell you that we've done a few pilots of the kind of modules, some of the modules, the units. There are many blocks and each block has units. We have prepared, let's say 60% of the work is done. We need probably another 6 months or a year to finish it. We've been doing pilots with teacher educators in different settings. The response we've got is that what they like so much about it is the use of a lot of videos and audio material, which can actually show them the different kinds of activities they can do with children without being didactic or oppressive in any way. This is the program structure that we use. Okay, now this is just, you'll see, it's like a regular teacher education program. There's no difference, but the idea is how do you enrich it? And I can share with some of you if you want. If you're not able to take it, don't worry. So this is how we do it. So we have modules, then each module has blocks, we have number of units, but we are focusing on two things. One is conceptual learning. That is, the teacher must understand what are the concepts that she has to deliver, but also what are the implications. Or in the classroom, a lot of that is left out of teacher education. They are asked to make lesson plans simply on how to deliver the lesson, but not actually how to engage with children. And some of that is shown here. I'll just take you through one example. For example, we have the first module on understanding the elementary school child. And some of these are given by IGNOU. But number 9 and 10 is what we have added. River has added these: moral development, social emotional learning, because these were missing. So in this, let's say I take why is understanding the elementary school child so important? And here we use the work of Richard Davidson to actually explain why the teacher, because the teacher does a course in psychology called Understanding the Elementary School Child, based on Western theories of learning and development, but really has no idea about why she...
There are 4 major developments in modern science which have enabled this work to go forward, and I'd like to just name those 4 themes because they're so central to all of this work. The first is neuroplasticity. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard this word, and it simply means that the brain changes in response to experience and in response to training. Most of the time, the brain is changing unwittingly. Most of the time, we are being pushed and pulled by the forces around us and not engaged in the intentional shaping of our brains. And a central theme of my remarks today is that this is an invitation to take more responsibility to intentionally cultivate
So this is what we show
our
the
brains
teachers, and with
in ways
voiceover
that
in
can
Hindi
promote
or in
well-being
Telugu or
and healthy
translation.
habits of mind.
Okay?
We can take
In the next one, he
advantage
continues.
of neuroplasticity and intentionally shape our brains for the good. There are four
I don't have time, so I'm just going to move through
third
this.
themes.
So now the teacher must understand why it's so important for her to actually understand child development and her role, because of the idea of neuroplasticity and how the change can take place, and why her role is so significant. And then, for example, if we take the unit on social emotional learning, we have an outline where we teach them, show them what are we going to cover, what will be their conceptual learning, and what will be the classroom implications. I'm just going to run through some of this, and then we come to show them so this is how the teacher is going to see this in her tablet. Okay, why actually is social emotional learning happening? What happens in the classroom does not only relate to the mind, it's not about cognition, but is related to the hearts of children. And how are we going to develop these? So we talk to them about the core competencies of social emotional learning, and then we look at each competency in detail. So, self-awareness and the different aspects of that were detailed in the last slide. And then in every unit, we have reflections. So the teacher has to sit back and reflect on what she has learned. And some of these engage with also, again, some things which were being talked about yesterday, mindfulness. Can you just sit down and look at your thoughts? How do you feel when you do this? What significance does this practice have for you? Then write down your thoughts. Some exercises for teachers to think of for themselves, and also some things they can do with children. So these are some of the program threads that are actually embedded in each unit. And it's just, you can have a quick read if I don't have time to go into it. And I'd just like to end by saying that what I've tried to do is to show that the sacred is in the everyday, in the transcendent present. We need to renew teacher education through self-knowledge, develop a nurturing attitude, and professional competence. So it's not at the cost of professional competence. It's not a soft option. It is an option that will work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Meenakshi ji, the director of the School of Economics, Delhi University. And in fact, I did not dare to disturb you in between, so you finished at the right time. Thank you so much.
I thought you rang the bell.
No, I did not. Because the flow was so good, and it's very just at the momentum. I don't want to disturb it. Okay, thank you so much. It was very enriching. Thank you. So next we have Professor T.J. Mishra ji. You all know him, and the man behind the Ramanujan colleges, the actively invoking the youngsters into this universal ethics. Okay, here we have Professor T.J. Mishra ji.
Thank you, Chairman, Professor Dandul, and distinguished speakers, largest speakers, and the audience. My friends, I would like to begin with what we ended yesterday, and that was our Vice Chancellor, Professor Mishra, said that all throughout we are being taught you are different, every one individual is different. We have to find universal elements in human beings, commonalities. Okay, flowers are different, but there are some similarities also in the flowers. Unless we identify those things, how can we come closer to each other? Each one of us like to be loved. This is the common thread. Why can't we appreciate that? So we have to explore those areas which brings us, which unites us, which brings us closer to each other. Another thing that yesterday Dr. Shrink talked about identity of Tibetans. I would like to share my views on that. Your identity is sourced in others. My identity as a father, tomorrow if my son refuses to accept me as father, identity gone. Leader's identity is known by the followers. No matter how good a leader is, but if you don't have too many followers, no one knows. So, yes, Dalai Lama is undisputed leader all over. But you cannot undermine that the vast majority, millions of Indians have been followers, including the state. You cannot undermine that. And for the last so many years, consistently. Well, Mahatma Gandhi, he considered humanity more important than nationality even. And that is why in United States, more than 200 advanced research institutes are working day and night that how come this fellow got freedom through non-violence. 200 advanced research institute. And that is why he is acknowledged as man of the century. Man of the century, all over the world. So when we talk of identity, identity is sourced in others. I can consider myself great. Even God is great. But the followers, disciples, no less. And that is why I talked about followership quality. About leadership styles, etc. West people talk because they have always been dominating. Charismatic leader can win. And you can see the Churchill, he won the war, but he was discarded by the people because you are not a peace leader. You are a war leader, you are not a peace leader. So these are the things which we should ponder. Well, coming back to this, metallization of universal. Metallization is very important, universal ethics, no matter how much we talk on that. But unless it materializes, and for our information, no legislation, no external regulatory authority can materialize universal ethics. It is out of self-realization that we can materialize universal ethics. No constitutional acts, no state activism can, materialize universal ethics. We have to educate the masses and we have to realize that it is really very important for the coexistence, then only it will materialize. Well, a role of teachers in educating this. Wonderful, it's a crucial role which we are not observing, especially at college level, I say, because, in the school, students, say prayers, but they don't understand the meaning of those prayers. At the college stage, when they are matured enough, they want to relate their prayers with the day-to-day life. They want to relate it with the problems they are facing, the career problems, life skills. So here, they want mentor, which we are not, having in the colleges. Okay, grievance redressal is there, but it is only grievance. But what about ethical dilemma that they face? We must have someone to tell them that this is right, this is wrong. Now, students are at crossroads, need a teacher of guru stature. A guru, yesterday I talked, guru has some key, some gur, which comes out of experiential learning. A guru आत्मसात करता है problems को, and then he comes out with solution. A befitting solution to the students. Okay, beta, you are facing this problem. This is how you can solve it. That elevates the stature of guru, and that is how guru earns respect from the masses, from the students. But we are missing out miserably on that, in the sense that we have also joined the competition with all those other professionals, that they are getting 1 lakh, we are getting 50,000, all rubbish. That is how we are losing our position, stature in the society. Now, need liberty and independence. Another thing that I would like to point out. No external agency can give you independence or freedom or liberty. Whether it is we are talking about women liberation and several other things. It comes out from within. If I am not jumping the red light, I am not going to be put behind the bars. If I am coming in time to the classroom, teacher is not going to throw me out of the class. My conduct gets me independence and freedom. If I am very obedient child, even if I enter at 12 in the night, my parents would understand that the guy is good, he must be doing something important for himself. He will not shout on you. Out of your own conduct, you can get liberty, you can get everything. This is universal ethics. This is universal ethics which we must realize. Then UE is a concept and doctrine meant to heal the wounds of the injustices done to people, upholding the culture of ethics and values in society. Well, this is self-explanatory. Now, this is important. If religion is a culture of faith developed by reverence, and science is a culture of doubts created by inquisitiveness, ethics or universal ethics, it is one and same. Ethics or universal ethics is a culture of trust earned by righteousness. You can have dispute in the religion, difference of opinion over science. Today science is saying something else, tomorrow science might say something else. Ethics will remain same. No dispute over the ethics part. Something which is liked by all is called ethics. So, if religious people and scientists strive to discover some truths, ethical people live in the same truth. The misnomer is with the teachers, everyone cannot teach ethics. You have to live the life. You have to adhere to the principles of ethics, then only anyone is going to listen to you. I am going to the classroom to teach ethics and I am going every day 10 minutes late. I am telling my students, why don't you come in time? Wrong. No one is going to hear me. They will just try to see how obedient this teacher is, how much he is adhering to the ethical norms. Then maybe he accepts your things. So the most difficult part with ethics is those who are practitioner of ethics can only deliver. Otherwise, no one is going to listen to you. It's all waste of time. Then, obviously, it augments respect, solidarity, and understanding. Education is incomplete until students develop a sense of duty, discipline, and ethical obligation. We must give due importance to all these things. The followership qualities, the listening ability, the patience, People are losing. Students are losing. Are we remedying them? No. We're not. We are just confined to the syllabus. Mechanical. Artificial. I wanted to say, through artificial intelligence, you have developed Facebook that creates delusion in the mind of millions. Why can't we create heart book, a trust book, through emotional intelligence, which removes those delusions and illusions? We can evolve that. People are in great problems. Who to believe and whom not to believe. Facebook is damaging the mental status of so many people. Can't we think of something else better than that? Heart book. Face can be different, heart is same. Let us work on that, and I hope that the sincere efforts of Tibet House under the leadership of Mr. Damdul, we can do it. And I also appreciate the audience for giving a patient hearing to whatever is being discussed here for the last day. Now, UA depicts some behavior patterns telling the truth. Simple. It's not difficult to understand. Being punctual, respectful, tolerant, behaving in a disciplined manner, not backstabbing, not indulging in theft, bribery, and corruption, and being secular, for example. Being ethical means understanding the truths of life and being established in the truths of life. People ask, what role do ethics and values play today? To them, a person would not even survive today with pursuits of ethics and values. So should we have values or discard them as outdated? Oh, well, ethics can solve all the economic problems. I'm also a student of economics. A vendor selling vegetable, he tells you that I have bought this potato for rupees 10 and I am charging 12 rupees from you, 2 rupees is my profit. Absolutely transparent. He is buying you forever. He is buying you forever as a customer and solving his entire problem. It is his lies which lands him up with the problems. A best cook, when he starts stealing your product, you remove him. He has, bought his problems because of his unethical practices. So, it is of value, and economically speaking, a thing which is in short supply commands high price. If you say there are no ethical people nowadays, this is all the good reason that you should be ethical, you will be demanded most in the society, you will be paid higher price than the common people. So this is something which is so simple. Demand and supply principle of economics. Why can't we apply that? Now, okay, we have to meet the challenge posed by post-truth era. Post-truth era. Nothing is true. It is only ethics that is going to handle that. Now, well, state has some role. State in the sense that it should acknowledge, it should make aware. the people that this is a good thing to practice. And yesterday also I mentioned that when the Prime Minister of country says that this is the internal failing of society, that the Kathua case, that is a very, I mean, it means that they are also aware of the importance of ethical values, individual values. And, the economist Kaushik Basu also has said that no matter how good your policies are, but if there are no individual values in the society, I mean, you cannot serve any purpose. So it is in the long-term interest of the community, of the society, that, we educate people on these lines. Okay, thank you. Taking cue from Madam, I was in hurry, and I hope I have completed well in time. And always one follows a leader. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. T.K. Mishraji. You did fabulous work, just exactly in time. Thank you so much. And next we have Professor Harsh Mishraji, a professor in the Department of Management Studies, IIT Delhi. The stage is yours.
Good morning, and thank you, Reverend Damdolji, for this opportunity. And I'm personally very moved to be here because, having attended several academic seminars, I don't get the same environment. The reason is twofold. One is the topic that we are dealing with, and secondly, it's the energy. Right? I feel when I walked in and I met various people, I gained so much in energy. So if you see me a little bit over energized, please excuse me for that. Before I start, I would want to thank, and 5 people come to my mind, and I was thinking about them, and even though I was not here, I was deriving a lot of inspiration. First of all, the person who invited me, because this is a unique forum that I am sharing, and that is Professor T.K. Mishra. He was the one who invited me. Yes. And I have known him for all my life. I won't tell you how, but he was also one of the reasons why I came to Delhi. So I spent my student years here studying at IIT Delhi. And first I had visited him when he was in the hostel in Delhi School of Economics. And I said, I need to be here because I like the discourse. Right? So at that time I was a student at IIT Bombay. And I felt maybe I need more dialogue environment, right? Because I would have less people to talk to when the students in the hostel, they will leave. Many of them were from main Bombay, so you have fewer people to talk to. And I liked the energy, so I was here. But even after that, he continues to be a source of inspiration and calmness and thoughtfulness that I derive from him. Then, of course, I knew that I was coming to Tibet House. And we know Honorable Dalai Lama, right? When I look at his picture, I just gain something. It's unexplainable. I haven't had the fortune of reading extensively of what he said, but I have had several, nowadays we live in the information age, so I hear some of the things that he has to say, and through those quotes, that keep circulating around is always a source of inspiration. And related to that is one of my friends who actually belongs to Tibet originally, but a Delhiite all through. And he's been a great friend. And so in fact today when I did my morning practice, I rang the Tibetan bell in the morning. It's a wonderful sound. So the other person comes to mind. Also, last night I had a school reunion and I met the principal of my school after 40 years. He's still alive and kicking, and as vibrant, Father K.T. Thomas from a small town in north of Bihar, Betia. And there was a reunion, and he said it was just so touching. I never expected him to be there, and I felt he remembered. It's a tremendous memory. He remembered me, my situation, my father, and how I came for admissions. Everything he remembered. And he said a few things as a takeaway that you have to have love for your students, you have to have love for your subject, and love for teaching. 3 things. So at the end I told him, Father, I extracted 3 things from what you said. He said, no, not those 3 things. Let me tell you one thing, and that is love for others. And that's the message I carried. From. And the 5th person comes to my mind is my mentor, a life mentor. He's Dr. Daisaku Ikeda. And I read something from his daily guidance, and he said, we should be millionaires of life force, right? And the last point, which I want to bring, millionaires of life force, that will come up. So in my presentation. Now, with that introduction, this topic of universal ethics is so timely, so relevant. And if you look at the world around, just yesterday I learned that something that could have escalated into a full-fledged war in the Middle East, at least for the time being, it's averted. You may have followed the news. And this environment where political developments and perhaps the challenge that one decision maker of a very high magnitude is facing could impact all of us, right? So that person's ethics matters. So it's very evident. Perhaps you know who we are talking about, right? The president of some powerful nation or even a small nation with nuclear weapons, how their ethics, when they clash and if they don't come to a resolution, we all are impacted. So that's one. Other developments like scientific and on which Professor T.K. Mishra has written the book, which I found just 3 days back, artificial intelligence and emotional intelligence, right? How emotional intelligence is critical. Really, artificial intelligence has posed a challenge, but it is something which we have come to, from what we have done for a long, long time. And it poses severe questions as to what would our future be like. And most obvious of them is employment, right? Would artificial intelligence out-employ people, right? And there's no resolution, but that at least sets the tone of why we need to discuss the universal ethics, because that is going to impact the whole world. Now, one thought that came to my mind, why not employ the whole artificial intelligence to solving employment problem? Can we do that? Let's put that force, right? Of course, that is not so easy because artificial intelligence is mostly engaged in solving maybe business problems, right? It has a narrow focus, perhaps, I don't know how we can turn that around. But you look around, whether it is the nuclear standoff or even molecular biology, some of these things set the context for genetics or cloning. Some of these things, the ethics is not settled as to what should be the right, and mostly it is marred by variations. And I spent very significant amount of time in other country. I was in the United States, and I felt that people have different sense of ethics. So there are cultural variations, right? And when I engage in dialogue with them, I begin to see their point of view, or they begin to see mine, and the matter is not settled, right? So that needs to be settled, and so the formation of universal ethics itself is a challenge. And of course, the great solutions that His Holiness Dalai Lama always suggests dialogue. Those are the ways, but they really don't come very easy. Nevertheless, it can settle the issues. What should be the basis of the universal ethics beyond cultural differences, beyond individual differences, is really, and what I'm discovering in writings after writings is the humanity be the basis. Now, even that understanding of humanity has variations across, right? What is humanity? But I am a believer of humanity really has solution. We can grow in our definition, understanding of it, right? It is a simple concept and yet a very profound concept. Democracy, I think this is another realization. Unless we grow in our democratic ways of dealing with our differences, right? Coming to true democracy of a kind, not limited democracy which can elect demagogues, right, who can harm the world. But really, the processes are so rich that we come up with empowerment of people, where people take the center stage, where people are the sovereign, right? That they are enlightened ones. They are not less informed, right? So that is, I think, if that is the case, we can quickly come to some universal right or wrong, if we are empowered. Because I saw that people disagree more when they are less informed, right? So evolution of democracy is very critical. Keeping the time in view, let me just quickly go to the part of the topic, the how. Now, if we have universal ethics, whatever is its form, how do we make it, how do we derive it for specific discipline? And my exposure in some areas, like I've been a business academic for a long time, but of course my interest lies in several other subjects like psychology and a little bit sociology, spirituality, religion. I have all that interest. So how do we make it, especially in a higher education setup? That's my challenge. Because Professor Meenakshi talked about the school level, and we know that school levels, as you refer to the Howard professor, the plasticity part, right? People are more, they absorb much more, but at higher education level, I feel people are relatively more settled in their right or wrong. Not fully settled though. So that is to, how do we really make that happen? Like in ethics class, which I taught in the past, really it turned into dialogues, and we had to step out of our shoes to be able to extract in some creative ways a way out, right? Otherwise, people will leave the class unsettled, right? Because people will walk away thinking, oh, we are all different, right and wrong, ethics has all variation. We really cannot get to a point like Professor T.K. Mishra was saying, the commonality aspect. So that's the challenge. And I was talking to Shubham and the whole group which did a mock debate on UN, and they came up with a solution that World War II would never have happened, should not happen. Right? That was an inspiring outcome they came up with. So I really feel that in higher education, now this is, we're talking about undergraduate level, but some of these ways, and I'll talk about that quickly, can actually make happen at least some of the gains in ethical value formation at a higher education level. So I suggest two things. One is value creation as a tool. Now, what do I mean by value creation? Classically, it means three things, three words: beauty, good, and gain or benefit. Right? Because benefit in, I'm not talking about business sense necessarily, but in terms of whatever we define. So value creation, in simple words, is the life challenge of how do we turn something like poison into medicine? Because situations will challenge us. They'll be like poison, difficult, right? How do we turn that into medicine? Or how do we make spring emerge from winter like situations? Right, and that's where the second part comes, the belief level. I think that as an educator of ethics, if I ever get a chance, I must believe, right? And that's where the role of really religion comes in, and Reverend Dandul referred to it. How the content part is rarely arrived at. But people are looking at differences because they stay at some other level. But I'm saying in some way, if we can go to the belief level, and those beliefs are not very beyond reach, they are profound, that we are the entity, and timeless entity that too, who can bring a certain life force and see more than what we normally see. And I do that on a daily basis because I'm often stuck in situations and I don't find a way out. But I feel that if I can elevate myself to a certain level, I can see more. I can see more in terms of solution. So on a daily basis, whether in terms of human relations or a professional challenge, or a social situation like somebody, on the roads can drive you very angry, right? It can all be addressed through that fundamental belief. We just strengthening that. So there's art and science of that value creation as a process, and one is this as an art. Now, appreciation of a situation or appreciation of people involved in it, right? That connects us to the art side of things, because that is not so well like a science, well sorted out, structured aspect. When we appreciate a situation or a person, we are really endowed with several inner qualities of ourselves, so we can connect to a person much better. So I really feel that appreciation in the classroom, right, is a great tool, is a great art. Also, in some creative way, and there are several methods, and I have tried some of them, whether storytelling, whether through interesting parables, through Panchatantra, or the story of elephant and the 5 blind men, right, which is rooted, right? We can actually we can let people come up with some artistic way of looking at things, some creative way of looking at things, without bringing that creativity from within. And that is also there in the design thinking in the modern terms, where you try to take the sky view and look at the relationship not necessarily on the ground, but from a different level. We do find better solution. And when the ethical decisions are not hard, we take them with ease. We are not ethical because it is hard for us. Right? So that's what I see in business situations. The chief executives they are stuck in a situation. It's not that they don't possess ethics. They have learned about it. It's there in them. But just the business situations drive them to the wall. And they end up, so all those various unethical business behavior, you'll see that all those that comes into play. Now the science part, I think, is more broader. Science meaning what is universal, right? I mean, that's, of course, science deals with more worldly aspects, visible aspects, tangible aspects. But here I referring more to science of life. So can we, for example, the more important point is, can we look at the life of great ethical leaders? Can we look at them a little bit more microscopically? Can we derive the more fine-tuned wisdom or examples from them? Right? That's why I acknowledge that I haven't gone deep into His Holiness Dalai Lama's life, but I am inspired. I will go pick something. I want to take a deeper view of him, right? So if students in my class, they can do it for a few people, I think they will be enabled with, or they will be equipped with power to do right or wrong. And also, by design, they will tune into the universal ethics, which is not so hard to define, as we learn. And some lessons from history where things really went wrong. But I was encouraging Shubham and the group to really do good research on situations, right? So it will give them insight, and he agreed to that. Lastly, the method. So one is that in moral education, the adaptation is so critical, right? We adapt the situation to a learner, right? So that's the methodology aspect, and it should be relevant to a learner, because oftentimes I saw in business, case study method is very common in business schools, but people can't relate to it. They think, okay, I'm learning about a business situation, someday I will encounter it, right? While the truth is, they are here to learn now. So how do we really make that happen? So challenge of method really lies there. But very importantly, how do we bring empathy aspect in the classroom? Because that's the way to connect. That CEO is not someone out there or superhuman, or let's say anybody who's great as human in this world, that they are not inaccessible. They're not like mountains we cannot climb. So that kind of empathy where they relate to it is very critical as a method, and keeping the learning outcome in mind, which is that they are there to take decisions. It would be challenging. But the next thing is that they should be able to hold on to it, because a lot of times I saw that ethical decisions are taken, but in course of time they get diluted, right? So again, it's back to the same thing. So people may on the spur of the moment take a decision, but they don't have the courage to sustain it. So that's the part. But finally, as a strategy, and this is what I emphasize the most, and I saw the idea mirrored in Professor Meenakshi's presentation, is one, and this is I'm saying from my own example, having some kind of practice, a practice which lets you connect to the spiritual energy, introspection, right? Any method which takes you to that higher world, where, or I would say inner world, and you are able to sort of derive that energy, right, and set that example. I think that's the and Professor T.K. Mishra was saying on that, set that example, because it's not easy to set the example, to be on time. It's not also easy to to tell somebody that you should do this. But if you have those examples, but I truly believe, and this is the last thing I would say, is let's be, I think, how do we do that in our classroom? Becoming the millionaires of life force. right? We can do it, we can dig in, we can use it as a daily practice of life. As teachers, we ourselves need to do it, and then perhaps inspire and encourage and engage students to be also on the same platter. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Harsh Mishra ji. And we have time just for one or two questions. So okay, there are so many hands over there, but please make it very short. It should be a real question. And if possible, you introduce yourself and also to whom you ask a question, you mentioned the person.
To build the trust between the teachers and the public in school. Do you see, is it important to build the trust between the teacher and public in school? For example, in Finland education system, there's a model of public trust and cooperative model. So the building of trust between the teachers and the public in school, is it important for the teacher education?
Answer it, because
Okay,
we've
so
only...
this is not something that I am familiar with, this whatever practices in Finland about building of trust with the community. But the idea is to actually do that. That is why I had that one of the foci of this approach is actually to engage with the community. And to engage with the community, as I was trying to show, so that the school or the teacher is not working in an isolated environment and does not think that education is something that takes place in the four walls of a classroom, but is actually connected to the community. But I can learn from you if you have more to say afterwards at tea break. Yeah.
Well, this is very simple. Trust begets trust, love begets love. You start trusting your children, you start trusting your students, students will develop trust in you. Simple.
There's one girl there. Yes.
Tashtale, good morning. My name is Tinle Charan. I am doing my master's right now in literatures and English. Something that really intrigues me and has always intrigued me is the concept of universal ethics. And I'm not going to go to the education aspect of it because I also think it's very important to define what a universality in ethics means. And I think it's something that Dr. T.K. Mishra and Professor Harsh Mishra did touch upon a little bit, but I would really like you to elaborate because so the question is, do you really think that a universal ethics can be achieved? Because even when we talk about philosophy, even when we talk about ethics within philosophy, there is always a concept of relativism. And in relativism, all judgments are relative to the individuals and situations at hand. So if it's someone going to, say, a forest and there is an Adivasi tribe who believes in cannibalism and that is their ethics, who are we to sort of, tell them that for us, for the more non-barbaric people who are more civilized, we will obviously find that practice completely inhumane and unethical. So how do we reconcile that and bring it to a universal ethics?
Okay, I think this is very important. This is a very serious matter. In fact, this is what came up yesterday as well. Otherwise, the moment this concept is not resolved, saying that, oh, this is very relative, it should be understood in a very relativistic sense, it's a subjective, then the whole purpose of convening this conference is defeated. So the idea is that first of all, we have to admit that the world is going through crisis. We have to start from there, not from the universal ethics. Start from the world is in crisis. Once we admit this, and for example, what happened in Jammu, the young girl, very innocent girl, what happened? So we have to admit that the world is in crisis. Don't think that we are in Delhi, we are in a nice, cozy building AC room. This is what everybody is enjoying. We have to think of the world is in crisis. The world is on fire, is on fire. So then the question arises, why this problem is happening? When you look for this, the causes of this problem, then we identify what are the factors responsible for these problems. So any measure which will help us to address this problem, that is the universal ethics. So that is what for. If I say that, okay, from Buddhist point of view, is law of karma, right? And those people who don't believe in law of karma, they will say that we have nothing to do with this. Okay, this is your business. Whereas is a God, is the God intention, then it has nothing to do with us. But we don't believe in God. Okay, so this is something to do with the religiosity. We are not believers. So therefore, who will take the responsibility to solve this crisis? So there must be some basis or some measures by which this problem can be averted. So this measure, which can universally be accepted, for example, say, believe it or not, even the cannibals, even the animals, even what we call as the barbarians, even those people, they have their own children. They love their children. And the children love them. So this love and affection, this is the heart of the universal ethics. If you can teach this, that this love and affection, this is something which we can share. No, for example, day one you were born. Day one we are born, right? We don't know who the woman is, the mother who gave birth to you. We have no clue. You have no love and affection to that person. But over time, after 3 years, after 4 years, the love and affection that you feel towards that mother is so intense that you can't even imagine to be separate from this mother for 1 hour, right? So how come that this much of love and affection built up over these 2 and 3 years is because of what I think Professor Harsh Mishraji said. It's because you have felt the greatest benefit from this person. So when you feel the benefit that you receive from this person, automatically your love flows towards that person. Likewise, when you feel that I receive the maximum benefit from the world, from the people around me, your love and affection will grow. The moment that your love and affection flows, that trust automatically kicks in. So therefore, that thing, all the systems which are grounded on the universe, on this value of love and affection, genuine love and affection towards others, that is the ground for the universal ethics. That will stop us from corruption. That will stop us from terrorism. That will stop us from all the misbehaviors, all the wrongdoings. So this is the hardcore of universal ethics. The question is the heart development. How can we inculcate? How can we teach this in the education system? How can we bring this to the education system? This is where His Holiness the Dalai Lama is putting so much effort. Likewise, all the various concerned people, they are very much was engaged in this endeavor. So this is a problem. This is the point. Yeah. Okay. We are running a little late. So therefore, those I see there are many hands coming up. You can please feel free to ask questions in the next session. Okay. Meanwhile, we have tea break.
Student session.
Okay, Sundani.
I would like to thank all the speakers for an interesting session and keeping the time as well. Now may I request Mr. Naresh Mathurji to honor our speaker and chairperson with a kata and a souvenir. Okay. No, this is Professor Meenakshi Thapanji. Venerable Geshe Doju Damdla. Professor Harsh Mishra ji. And Dr. T.K. Mishra ji.